Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here. Welcome to another episode of UnWoke Academy. I'm your host. First things first, I want to give a shout out to our distribution partners, OBBM Network. Spectacular folks over there helping us out. And also the terrific social media platform, blessednewstv.com. Go check it out, blessednewstv.com. Let's dive into the lawyers and the role the lawyers play. In order to frame a little perspective here, let's recap. I've talked about the undue influence that the money managers have, the investment managers in the world of financial planning, investment advice, fiduciary due diligence, things like 401k, etc. So over the last couple of months, we've spoken intermittently off and on about these big globalist investment managers and the amount of money that they kind of shower into the financial world. That means that in particular, and especially those big, beautiful ivory glass tower investment shops where everyone seems to want to go, I don't entirely blame them because they do look really attractive. And I was actually lured to some and worked with many of them through my career. And forever until 2020 or thereabouts, I really kept an open door to all of them. And I've worked with most all of the major financial institutions. There is so much money that flows through those that they have teams of lawyers and they've set themselves up for defense and actually also offense. So that what I mean by that is that in the world of investing, they develop product. And by product, I mean something like a mutual fund. There are lots of different alternatives. There are things that are similar to mutual funds that these investment managers might grow and develop and offer to the world and then try to sell to other financial services firms and to individuals like you, which means that your big globalist investment manager might create a mutual fund, and then they go through the process of getting that listed on an exchange. For instance, the New York Stock Exchange or the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, or there are many others all over the world, and they go and work to get those listed, which means that they're publicly traded at that point. And those are all based on an investment philosophy. So there are armies of lawyers out there that insulate and protect that investment. What that means is those lawyers then and that big firm are paying into a system that is self-perpetuating. They are paying into a system that pays big money to maintain those investments on those exchanges. So like New York Stock Exchange, it costs a vast fortune to get something that is somebody's idea of an investment philosophy onto the New York Stock Exchange. They're not the only one, but I'm mentioning them specifically because they're kind of a known name. They're a household name, I think. Imagine, if you will, just to use as an example, if we take the investment due diligence that's available through the whole broad universe of Second Vote information. Now, Second Vote has a 12-year span of data on companies. Many of them are publicly traded. So it's actually designed for, and one of the easy things to do from that is to take and build investment philosophy. So we've talked about that a lot. I could take something, and this is a hypothetical example, I could take something out of that and build an investment philosophy and turn that into a mutual fund. And then I could go through the steps of hiring some lawyers, get the lawyers to go in and file to get exchange status. And once it's there, then you would see it when you go into a trading platform online or go and open an IRA account or something. Or would you? There's a little wrinkles to that. Many of these firms are pay to play. What that means is once I develop this mutual fund, it's not like I'm automatically visible and available to lots of people in lots of different investment venues. So let's imagine for a moment that there are 5 different Wall Street type firms. So of those 5 firms, they have a small army of financial advisors, and those financial advisors are trying to make investment recommendations to their clients. Those investment recommendations, if they were to do them themselves, require a significant amount of research and personal due diligence. So they would have to go in and look at the investment philosophy and the manager and the track record and the performance and how much trading they do, the taxes and tax implications of that investment model. So what most often happens at these big Wall Street type firms is that investment due diligence, or that sales recommendation, if you will, is handed to them. It's kind of spoon-fed. And the premise behind that is you're busy as a financial advisor and you should want to go out there and service your clients and make them feel comfortable. Just go and do your thing. And we, the big behemoth, globalist, Wall Street based firm, will do all the due diligence for you and make your life easy. That's the shtick. That is the sales pitch to go and work for one of those big firms. You don't have to do your own investment due diligence. So in that environment, everyone knows that that big Wall Street firm is full of thousands of different financial advisors. And those financial advisors each have clients, and those clients have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with which to invest. That's a big pool of money, and the Wall Street firms, they don't want to give up access to that freely. If I were to take the investment due diligence of Second Vote, build a portfolio, create a mutual fund, get the mutual fund onto the New York Stock Exchange, I would then have to go to each of those 5 different Wall Street firms and pitch them on the idea of offering that mutual fund. So it looks something like this. I would go in, of course, with my best foot forward and show investment performance and show them my philosophy and how it differs from other people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I would try to convince them to add it to the list of things that their representatives have available to sell to their clients. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where pay to play often comes in, because those firms will say to somebody like me, well, we know that you want to sell your product, but if we just open the floodgates just a little bit, that could be a huge windfall for you. What's it worth to you to come and grease the skids a little bit? What's it worth to you for us to give you access to our client list? And so that's when the bartering and the back office kind of start in that arrangement. So in that arrangement, I would then start offering what's called a kickback. And so I would tell them, well, in exchange for all that hard work you're going to have to do in order to keep track of me and the due diligence, that's going to be a lot of work. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the money back. And so I'm going to charge whatever, it's going to be 0.5%. My charge for this investment to manage it is 0.5%, and I'll give you half of that. So we're each getting 0.25%. Hoorah! I just used round numbers just to make the math easy. I want to get the math out of the way so we don't fixate on that. Those are not realistic numbers. They're actually often wildly different, but that's all negotiated, and it depends on the size and how much money is in there and how much they think they can sell it, etc. And of course, there are plenty of times, lots of times I'm aware of, that small investment managers have gone in and pitched those Wall Street types of firms, and the Wall Street firms have gotten together around the table and they bring all their lawyers in and all that stuff. and then they look at it and say, no, we're not interested. Come back when you have more real money. So it becomes, and this is a big part of the problem that I have and big part of the issue with that sort of environment. When you start thinking of the clients that are represented and supposedly served by that Wall Street firm, when you start thinking of them like shooting fish in a barrel, and it's really literally how much profit can we squeeze out of those dollars, out of those families and those individuals, and there's really not a lot of room left for integrity, for what could we do to make their financial lives better. Now, of course, every one of them I know gives lip service to the notion that they have loaded with integrity and they're going to always do the very best thing in the best interest of the client, etc. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have an environment where there is money flowing and people are paying each other off and still offer the best possible deal to the client. It's just there's not enough money, there's not enough real profit to go around in that way. So somebody's suffering, and typically my view is that is the end user, that's the client. So in that sort of crazy, weird environment, you do have some that get through and they have really generous, big money attached to it. So that's an environment where all of a sudden those 5 Wall Street firms perk up and they get really attentive because there's big money to be made. And that's when they will actually add it to a sales list. And that's when, if you heard that, I did a podcast a while ago on that weird cockamamie sort of sales environment. I used to hate those meetings, but I was mandated for 2 years to go to those things. That was the podcast where I slipped up on speakerphone, said something I shouldn't have. But in those sales meetings, you will get the sales team all organized and sitting around with in tune, attentive ears, making some notes and figuring out what is the thing to sell this week. What's the hot thing? The hot thing, really, let's be candid about that. In my view, in my experience, that is not a hot thing that's about to make the client a whole lot of money. That's a hot thing that's about to make the big Wall Street firm a lot of money, meaning all the people in it. So there's a whole pyramid of people that make big, big money. When you're talking about making the sales list, that's the kind of money where, and I've got this is actually a representative example that I made a while ago in a discussion. You can see here, I've got the illustration down here is here. This is where your financial advisor is that you meet with. And then you've got the manager, and you've got the sales manager, and then the office director, and then the regional director, and then the division director. And then you have a bunch of specialists in there that are doing specialist-y kind of things. And then you have the EVP. There's a whole suite of those executive vice presidents. And then way up here, you have the chairman. And so maybe the chairman is making $83 million a year, let's say, just hypothetically. So maybe the chairman's making $83 million a year, and your financial advisor is making $700,000 a year. And your manager is $1.3 million, sales manager is $1.6 million. These are just hypothetical numbers. So all of these people have to get paid. And when those big sales meetings come along and they push on tens of thousands of people to sell some product, remember, we're just using the hypothetical of a mutual fund. And the mutual fund, it can't be one that says to the Wall Street firm, okay, well, you're going to make $10,000 in year one, and then maybe it's $50,000. That doesn't work for that environment. It doesn't pay nearly enough. So you have to be in an environment where right out of the gate, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars. And the harder you push, the bigger that number. That's how the sales game works. And here's where the lawyers come in. As promised, I want to talk about kind of the legal elements. So there's a browbeating fear that's pervasive, and it is drilled into people really in all professions now. You have, and again, bear with me, I'm going to sort of jump around into different disciplines just to illustrate this point and make it crystal clear what I'm talking about here. In the world of healthcare, you have a clear knowledge that doctors are confined in what they can and cannot say. We already talked about the undue influence that pharmaceutical firms have on medical training and medical staff and continuing education, and the growth and business development of those organizations. So now you have an environment where the doctors are really pressured not to say certain things and to say other things as often as possible. So put another way, it's turned into, unfortunately, kind of a sales environment. And we can clearly say that because now, over the past few years, it's actually come out in public view that some doctors have actually received financial bonuses for hitting certain prescription quotas, writing certain types of prescriptions or a certain medication over and over again to enough different people. And there was another one for the doctor's offices that hit certain target percentages of those jabs that came out in response to COVID fear. Jab as many patients as possible. If you hit 80% of your client list, then you get this bonus. And then if you hit 90%, maybe it's another extra $50,000 or $100,000, or who knows what some big financial windfall. But if doctors went into that environment and suggested something like an ivermectin or a quercetin or more vitamin D or C, or talk to the patient about their sleep and dietary habits and their weight and their general overall health, those, by the way, are not medical advice. Those are just kind of paraphrasing the conversations that were not permitted to take place during COVID. And we know now that many doctors actually were threatened with legal action if they did take those steps and talk about those things. And so that's a crazy dynamic, because you certainly had patients that were going in and asking questions about those things, but doctors were not permitted to talk about them. The same thing is happening in schools and K through 12 education. There are lawyers literally that are going in and applying pressure to boards of education to get them to not discuss certain things and to make certain steps and take certain actions, and telling board members that if they do what they feel is right, they may personally be liable, and that the legal team is going to play hands off and not protect them. That is a crazy, crazy environment to be in. And a specific example is the discussion of pornographic material and pornographic books, and boys going into girls' bathrooms and girls going into boys' bathrooms. And that craziness, there are board members that have been told that they cannot discuss that, or the legal team is going to play hands off and they'll be left on their own to defend themselves in the event of a lawsuit. So let's get back to finance. In the world of finance, there are plenty of good, competent financial professionals out there who would like to find the right things to do what's truly beneficial for their client. But the feeling and pervasive fear is the armies of lawyers, and they're everywhere in the world of finance. Those armies of lawyers can and will turn against the individual. They will, in a heartbeat, they will throw any individual at one of those mega firms under the bus, so to speak, and they will just go after that person and use them as an example if they don't do the right things that the company wants. So that doesn't mean anything about the effectiveness of the advice that's given. So there may be two pieces of advice. One does wonderfully for the the customer of the financial firm, and one does horribly but makes the company a lot of money. The one that makes the company a lot of money pays the lawyers, and they will fight and work to defend that one and create justification for having that on the list and having made that recommendation. It's easy to do after the fact. Say, well, we missed on that one and it was so unfortunate. The manager didn't do well, whatever. But at the same time, behind the scenes, people like me know that there are good investment options that are not paying huge sums to the big mega financial firms that are cut off. And literally, I believe those financial professionals are told it's not on the list. You can't talk about it. You can't offer it. You can't answer any questions about it. That is a broken environment across the board in healthcare, in pharmaceutical, in medical delivery, in K through 12 education, in everything, financial wherewithal, financial advice, your financial life. That is a broken formula with lawyers working against the interests of the end user. We shouldn't have that. Those are corporate lawyers that have effectively taken over certain important, critical elements of our American lives. Let's fight back and find ways to organize against that. I've got some ideas coming up in future episodes. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. Thanks for listening. This has been UnWoke.Academy.